Hey, what's up YouTube and betanews.com readers? Brian Fajoli in a second part video now. I just did the unboxing of my Raspberry Pi 2 and I'm going to install it into this case. This case will protect it. You don't necessarily need a case for a Raspberry Pi or Raspberry Pi 2, but you know what, if you want to protect it, it's probably a good idea. Now, my particular case came with some heat sinks. Now, I see a big one and a small one here, so it would go on these two sections, and I'm gonna try to use them. Let me see. Make sure I put that on the static bag. So inside the bag here, I have 4 screws. Now these 4 screws are to connect the 2 pieces of the case, and I also have these little rubber feet that will go on the bottom of the case to prevent it from skidding or moving around. It'll just be a little bit better stability. But let's take a look first at putting these heat sinks on. I don't think it's really necessary, but at the same time, I also don't think it will hurt anything. So let's see. So on here is a 3M adhesive back, and there should be like a thermal paste adhesive underneath it. So I'm just going to peel this off very slightly. Now, if you see here, this is now it's like a thermal adhesive pad. And I'm just going to stick this. It really doesn't matter, I guess, which way you want the fins. I'm just going to put it on there, if you can see that. Like so. I'm just going to stick it on. Now, the Raspberry Pi, you know, probably doesn't need these heat sinks, but I know with the Raspberry Pi, the first edition that I had, you could overclock it. So if you're going to overclock your Pi, which I probably will end up doing if it's easy enough and there's no risk, I will probably overclock. Then, you know, heat sinks might be a good idea. Again, this case was $8, which I think is a steal, especially when it comes with these little heat sinks. So again, this heat sink now I'm now going to put onto this chip very carefully. I just want to make sure that it sticks on and that it's sticking just on the chip. It's not, these metal heat sinks aren't touching any components around it. You don't want anything to short out. Alright, so now we have 2 heat sinks installed on the Raspberry Pi 2. So what I'd like to do now is put it into the case. Now, this part you would think would be the top. This is actually the bottom where it has the Arduino. This is where the screws will go in and the rubber feet will go on. So this is the base. So now the question is, let's see how this will go on. So if you look at the way these line up, it would go like this. And let's see. So the micro SD card slot will face this way. So I have the card in already. So if you see here, I'm lining up the holes, and the card is already sticking out. This way I don't have to worry about later getting the card in or out. It's already in. It's fine. It's the card I'm going to use. Although I will have to pull it out for loading an OS, but either way, I'm just going to put it in, leave it in for right now. So the other way this will go in, as you can see, there's cutouts here for the Ethernet, for the USB. So this should just go right on top. It should sit right on top nicely. Let's see. Which so far it's not. Let's see why. Okay. Again, this case was $8 from Amazon. Okay, there we go. So now it's lined up. There we go. And it's on securely. And the holes I can see are lined up. So now what I need to do is to screw this in. So, go ahead. And get the screws. So we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we have 4 screws ready now to do the installation. So let me just go ahead and grab my screwdriver. Let's see. For this particular job, these are relatively small screws. I'm going to use a small Phillips bit. I'm just grabbing anything I can find. I have a lot of different things laying around here. Perfect. So this is not really the screwdriver that I need to use, but I have this laying around. So we're going to just insert this bit, which is magnetic. or not. Let's see. Yep, so that should fit in fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the screws in on all four because I don't want it to move around or become unaligned, because right now all the holes are like perfectly lined up and I want it to stay that way. So I'm going to put in all the screws. Now I'm going to screw them in. Now, I also noticed from looking at it, there's no threading inside. So these are basically screwing into plastic. So it's actually surprisingly not as hard as I thought it might be. But over tightening could probably break something. So I'm not going to tighten them too much. So I always like to go diagonal like this, where I'm going to screw in those two corners that are apart from each other. Then we're going to screw in the other two. And again, I can always go back and tighten this up, but I'd like to just get it to a point where everything is lined up and going in. So this is actually going very well. Lastly, we have this screw. Okay. Perfect. If you have an electric screwdriver, those are very good. They can over tighten though, so you do want to be careful. Again, these cheaper cases, and I say cheaper, it's actually built rather nicely, but these inexpensive cases, they're just kind of molded plastic, so you want to make sure that you're not over tightening and breaking anything. So let's see, let's get them in. I just want to get it in enough where if you see there's a seam between the pieces, I want to make sure there's no gaps in the seams and that it's on there tight. So now it is. So, not done yet. Now, before I do anything, let's just admire the case. So the case itself is now hooked up. So this is a full-fledged computer. On the top, we have cutouts for different ribbons. If you want, like I said earlier, if you wanted to hook up the display, if you wanted to hook up the camera, or if you wanted the GPIO. Now, I'm not using those, but the cutouts are there in case I want to add something in the future. And as you can see, it's not too hard to, unscrew these. I mean, the screws went in pretty easy. With that said, I probably wouldn't want it constantly being screwing in and unscrewing them because, like I said, they're not threaded. So me screwing in those screws kind of made threads, but I don't want the plastic to crack or anything. So I would suggest getting everything set up the way you want it first before installing a case. But I do have the options there. So let's see what we have next. So on the bottom, there are four, so you can see that there, four kind of divots, cutouts on the bottom. And let's see. On this piece here, let's peel off the top piece. These are the little rubber pieces that have an adhesive on them. And what I can do is now you take the adhesive part down and just stick it in there. Now you can see that the hole is now filled in with just a little rubber insert. For whatever reason, they give you 6 of these, which is cool. Just in case, I guess, maybe if you mess one up. But you just pull them out, stick them in the holes there. And the idea here is that this will prevent it from skidding or sliding on a desk. Is it necessary? Probably not. You could probably do without it. Okay. Oh, this one still has the paper on it. Take that off. Okay. So now, we can see in the bottom, 4 screws holding everything in, 4 rubber feet, and now when I put this down and move it, it doesn't slide as much as it would. So you just slide, now it's kind of a little bit more sturdy when moving around on a desk. So, as I mentioned earlier, as far as power for this thing, it will use micro USB. So here's, like, for instance, the this is for the UE Mega Boom. There's micro USB right there. A large part on the top. Bam! It actually fits. I was worried it might be a little big, but nope, it fits perfect. So I could plug that into the power. The HDMI will then go into the monitor. As far as network, let's get to network if I can find it. If I could find this darn thing, let's see here. Well, it looks like my USB internet adapter has gone MIA. However, just as an explanation, so this thing, you can hardwire it into an Ethernet cable, directly to your modem, or hardwire it into a router. But of course, with 4 USB ports, you can easily add a USB Wi-Fi. And I have one. It's from Panda. I got it on Amazon a while back, and it works good with Linux. No, you don't have to go nuts trying to compile drivers or anything. It's all open source and good. But there you go. So Brian Fagioli here with BetaNews.com. We'll be reviewing the Raspberry Pi once we actually have some time to play around with it. But here it is. It's the Raspberry Pi with 2 heat sinks installed. It only costs $8 for this case, including the heat sinks. So now I can go ahead and do a little overclocking if I want to. I don't have to worry about potentially burning out anything. Those heat sinks should add a little bit better cooling. So there you go. Brian Fagioli with BetaNews.com. Thank you so much for watching, and look out for the review very soon. Bye-bye.